Hello and welcome back to another Guidance from Within episode. I am your friend and host, Brittany Woods, bridging the seen and unseen worlds of our reality. I am so excited to dive in today because we're going to talk about past lives. I'm going to take you on a journey into what a past life is, what is reincarnation, how could this be possible, and give you some personal experiences that I have had when sort of diving into and remembering some of my own past lives. So it's going to be really, really fun. I hope that you enjoy. Past lives, we hear about them all the time. I feel like, especially in the spiritual community, and we're so curious. Like, we want to know about our soul's lineage, and we want to know where our soul has been on the earth, and maybe not on the earth, maybe in other places. Who knows? Well, reincarnation is this thought that life and death is infinite, where our soul quite literally is born into a new body and then lives a life here on the earth or in the 3D. And then as we cross over and we pass away, we go back to spirit. Then when we're ready, we'll come back into another body. And we keep repeating this cycle for a lot of reasons, possibly for some spiritual growth and advancement, right? That's the main one. And then also maybe even just to have fun while we're here and see what we can create along the way. Reincarnation is huge in the work that I do. So as an Akashic Record reader and an energy healer, a lot of the healing work stems from past life trauma or past life experiences that we in this life are here to help heal from, and also clear the sort of karma up, right? Like, we are trying to lighten the load here so that we are truly reaping what we sow, where whatever we've done in our past lives has to be corrected or balanced moving forward in the newer lives that we take. Well, in the Akashic Records, I have found a lot of fun lives that I've lived that I wanted to share with you. And also through energy healing, I've been doing energy healing since I was 14. So 12 years now. A lot of that journey, I have healed and seen visions of past life trauma as I was healing in the energy healing, the esoteric healing session. So it's a lot. I know that it's a lot, but I'm sure that you yourself are curious, or you wouldn't be here. You're probably very curious about your past lives. And I want to mention a couple of mine. At the end of the episode, I will share a couple of past lives that some listeners have sent in to share with the audience. So stay tuned for that. One of the easiest ways that we can tap into our past lives are our dreams. Dreams can be so visual. And a lot of times when we are in that unconscious kind of vulnerable state, some of the heavier things that our soul has been through that we do remember can come up in a dreamlike state, right? So in this dreamlike state, some of the things that we think are just fake, or our mind being really out there and funny and doing weird things, these can actually be memories that are surfacing from one of your last incarnations. I have definitely had dreams where I was on another planet and I was not human, but the beings there were very sort of thinner skin, but very like paper white skin that was pretty thin, and it was a darker planet. On this planet, these beings worshipped this massive energy that was red, yellow, orange, green, blue, and sort of silvery. Like, I can't really describe it. I know that my human brain was trying to hold on and grasp the imagery, but to me it looked like a ball of burning energy, all these different colors, where these beings drew their sort of energy from, or life force from. So that was really cool. That was an interesting dream that I had, where I woke up and I knew that I was totally somewhere else in the universe, and it was really fun to see. I also have had a connection with and done sort of some past life regression, and have had some conversations with me as a sound healer in ancient Atlantis. So if you think about Atlantis and you think about sort of like these heightened, beautiful, wise, very, very amazing societies that were in harmony with the earth, right? We built those societies, and one of the most famous ones is called Atlantis. Well, I do know that I was a sound healer in Atlantis, which is why I think when I was really little in this life, I loved singing and I loved hearing other people sing as a way of kind of bringing joy into this experience. Well, as an Atlantean sound healer, I would come across people who were maybe out of balance, their chakras, their energy body, maybe even their physical body was feeling sort of out of alignment in one way or the other. I would sing different tones with my voice to help bring back balance to the chakras of someone that I was helping heal, which I think is really cool and fascinating. And I think that that can still happen today and is still happening today. I mean, sound healing is very real, but I've had some time and I spent some time learning from that woman, asking her to be a guide for me as I move forward in my own spiritual journey in this life. So that was a really fun, wow, that was a really fun time. That was about 2 years ago, but I love thinking about it. I have had past life experiences where I would be walking on sacred sites and would have a memory come across me. So, two of these places, one is Newgrange in Ireland, this like sacred, spiritual, ceremonial burial site in Newgrange. I remembered being there. I remembered walking around the stones that have these beautiful sort of sacred symbols etched into these stones. They look like swirls. I remember being there and seeing the like etchings and the carvings into these stones being sort of created and setting up the sacred space of Newgrange. I didn't have more visualization than that when I was in Ireland, but I do know that I was there. I could feel it. Also at Stonehenge in England, when I was at Stonehenge, walking around and sort of taking in the sacred site, I stopped walking in my tracks. I had a huge pause and I had this wave of light shoot over me. And one of my memories from Stonehenge was that this was a place of prayer. It was, I get goosebumps when I talk about it right now. You know, there's so many things that people wonder what Stonehenge was used for and what was it. And in that visual, I saw it being a community gathering place where there was a lot of sacred ritual happening, and it put me right back there. I know that a part of my soul and my existence was there in the height of this ceremonial place. It was really fun. Also, while in Ireland, I was walking around this town called Kilkenny in Ireland, and my grandmother and I were just exploring Ireland and having fun. We were walking through the streets of Kilkenny, and this was now almost 10 years ago. 8 years ago, because I was 18 when this happened, or 19. And so we're walking around Kilkenny and we take a back street and we're kind of lost, but it didn't feel like we were lost. We're just kind of having fun. We take this back street and we see this small church. It was like St. Mary or something. And my heart starts pounding. And I'm like, Grandma, we have to go into this church. We have to go see this church. And she's, of course, like, well, we've seen a lot of churches. It's Ireland. They have churches everywhere. Are you sure? Like, do you really want to spend our afternoon going here? And I'm like, yes, of course. We have to go. We open the gate. It was a public area. It's a private cemetery, but anyone who's visiting the church can kind of walk through, right? So we're walking through the cemetery, and the dates on this cemetery is from like 1600s, 1500s, 1700, right? Like it was a really, really old cemetery. Obviously, no one is being buried there today because there's no room, and it's like a sacred site now, pretty much. Well, walking through the cemetery, I'm so drawn, like my heart is tugging me to a crypt that is above the earth. So it's not buried, it is a crypt above the earth, right? It is a huge stone slab that was a coffin, right? Like there was someone buried in there. I walk over and I place my hands on this stone slab, and it's like coming up to my hips or higher. It's pretty tall. I start crying and crying and crying and crying and crying. And my grandmother's actually a medium as well. So when I'm having this reaction, she decides to tune in and do a little reading for me. What she was seeing was my family during that time was very well known throughout Kilkenny, Ireland, and they were one of the more sort of like upper societal classes of Kilkenny. I don't know the history of this family, but I do know that they were well known and they were wealthy, and their name was very well known, and their families will be buried at this church. I either think I was buried or my family members in that lifetime were buried at this church. So when I was there, the energy was so intense that my heart's pounding and I'm having this huge emotional wave come through me where I'm crying. And I truly believe, I truly, truly, truly believe that I have walked those streets of Kilkenny before, and my unconscious mind was leading me and taking me down those really old cobblestone streets in Ireland to be able to find that church, to be able to reconnect with that past life. And it's interesting because once I came back into my body and I stopped crying in that moment, my grandmother said she saw me as a little girl hanging out at the church and running around the church grounds. And she says that that was a really happy lifetime for me. So it was really important that I got to go back to that area of the earth, be there again in the physical 3D so that I could sort of remember the joy there or become aware that we are multidimensional and you can connect to your past lives. That was the most intense past life memory that I've had come forward because it was so surreal. It was so intense, right? And at the age of 19, before I became a reader, I think that that was a beautiful sort of lesson that life gave me to help me understand the unseen world, right? Like the real reality and the connections and the weavings that we're so much more infinite than meets the eye, which was really, really cool. I do know I've had lives in Egypt. I see Egypt a lot. I see myself as a priestess there a lot. I also see myself scribing. I also see myself walking. And I got to tell you, the Egypt that I remember, it's really interesting because I haven't been there in this life, but one day I will, right? One day I'll go to Egypt. But the memories I have of Egypt were very watery and very green, which I think is super interesting. I get goosebumps talking about it because if you look at the Sphinx, right? The infamous Sphinx in Egypt, they have found watermarks and water lines around the Sphinx that might show that there was like water there or it was very green at one point. And which is fascinating to me is I have not like super gone into depth studying ancient Egypt. I don't feel like I need to because I feel it with my heart and I see it in the Akashic records so vividly that I know that at times it was more greenery, or they at least had, an oasis there where this beautiful, beautiful society was living. When we heal, one thing I want to mention is when we heal, when we are doing healing for our souls, we oftentimes have to dig into some deep layers to heal past lives. And along that journey, especially if we're in an Akashic record reading, I can vividly see some traumas that our souls, your soul, if I'm giving you a reading, has been through. And we take that fraction of your soul and we heal it in the moment and we bring it home to you so that you're not still stuck in that drowning, or you're not still stuck in that abusive situation, or you're not still stuck in maybe even child labor where the child labor was so traumatizing that you passed from it, right? There are these moments in these incarnations that still need our love and our attention, even if in this linear time, it is past life and it's in the past. All time is happening at once when we zoom out of the third dimension. So those moments of trauma with the soul, they still need attention and love and healing. And we can do that. With energy healing, with the esoteric healing, it looks a little bit more like through the chakras and through how your body is reacting today to certain things in your life. When I was receiving an energy healing session, I was 17 or so at the time. I know for sure I was in high school, but I started crying because my memory surfaced. Whatever energy healing I was receiving was targeted. My soul wanted that session to be targeted to this particular past life. In this past life, I was a young woman who had been killed by her husband. And I still feel the heaviness of her today, just because the memory, I could feel how real. I relive it when I think about it. I will say it that way. I relive it when I think about it. And even though I know I've healed from that moment in time, from that traumatic death, when I think about it, it still catches my breath a little bit because of this, even though I was sort of killed by this man. The worst part is I was outside of my body, right? So I was murdered. My soul, the fraction of me who was that young woman, left my body and watched from afar as my body was taken and dumped into a well. Whoa, right? So I'm having this experience during the energy healing session because I know in that moment, my soul fractal is watching my 3D body being disposed of. And I had to do a soul retrieval during that energy healing session in order for me to, I call it come home, in order for all aspects of myself in that moment to come home. It's really, really, really interesting now that I actually speak about it out loud because I haven't thought of this past life in a long time. But to watch yourself sort of die and what happens after that death, and then to today, as Brittany, go there and heal that part of my incarnation was very, very, very powerful. And that was a really big impact that I've had in my energy healing sessions too. Now I want to share a couple of past lives that some listeners have sent in that I find to be really fascinating. So Paula sent in and was telling me that in one life, she was a deaf Irish woman, maybe in the 1500s. Her name was Moirin, I believe, if I'm saying that right. There wasn't great opportunity for deaf people at the time, and so people just considered her dumb. And there was a guy that took her in. He owned an inn, and she helped him keep it up, help the guest. And the guy was really nice to her. So they traveled seasonally for some reason, and they went to a smaller country home at one point. It was a one-room house, and this man left her there, and he said he would come back, but he actually never did. She thinks that he might have went off to war and never came back to the home. So around that time, people sort of were seeing her as, an old witch, and they didn't really talk to her. The garden was overgrown, and she lived and she died there, and she didn't have any money, so she was kind of alone, which is a really sad past life, and I'm sorry that you had to experience that. But Paul also mentioned that she does have memories of past lives with her current wife, and in that past life there was a sort of love triangle going on, and there was a lot within the relationship as well in that past life. And even though the person she was in love with in this past life is her current wife, it was just really interesting to see and hear their connections. But she said she did die really young. She was murdered. She was stabbed in that lifetime around the age of 26 and 27. Wow. The drama, the mystery. And I have to say too, a lot of past lives, a lot of people think that their past lives are going to be magnificent and great. And I was the Queen of England, or, I was this high septon, or, we probably have lived past lives with status in that way. But most of our lives are going to be those sort of like maybe really hard and we do our best during that lifetime and we're trying to figure things out, most of our lives are going to seem sort of like normal lives that people live, building families or, building careers and learning how to love ourselves all the same, right? So were you the Queen of England in one life? It is very possible, right? It is very possible, but more than likely, most of your lives have probably been sort of mundane and just really human, very human. Another fun story from a listener, it comes from Melly. She had a cat that would only sleep on the right side of her neck, and she wondered why. Well, she found out that this cat has um, healing powers, right? Like this is a healing cat. And the reason why the cat was so drawn to sleeping on the right side of Melly's neck was because in a past life in Bali, she was bitten by a snake there. And so she was still healing from that experience. And Melly says it makes sense to her now, simply because she was afraid of vampires when she was little. It was a really big fear for her. And right, like if a snake has bit you on the neck, and you have this unconscious memory of it, I would be scared of vampires too. But she also submitted another past life, which I think is worth sharing as well. And she remembers being about 19 or 20, just outside of her village in Finland. She was washing clothes during the springtime in the river, but the river washed her downstream and she was able to get out of the river and find the river bank, right? And so she's walking and walking, but she became so exhausted from the experience that she decided to lay down and rest for a moment. And being so cold and exhausted, when she decided to lay down and rest, it actually killed her. So, and she realizes it wasn't a bad way to go, like it wasn't a bad death to have, but in this life as Melly, she tends to have these resistances to slowing down. And she also really hates the cold. Hate is a strong word, but she doesn't like the cold. And she finds that she needs to constantly heat her body and constantly be doing something because she has a fear if she's cold or if she decides to relax and, take a moment to regain her strength, she has a fear that she won't get up again. And what's really interesting is there's like, she says it's a soul regret. Her soul regrets that instead of pushing on and keeping and walking and trying to find help, that might have saved her life in that moment. Wow, I know that was a lot, but as we keep growing and these memories surface and we are doing the deeper work to sort of liberate ourselves from and heal, right? Like heal from the trauma of our past lives, but also enjoy, like to understand and to zoom out how infinite we are and to enjoy the past lives and to know that we have gotten this far and to not waste it, right? Like we've gotten this far and we've done so much and we've experienced so much as souls through our incarnations, right? Like let's just make the best of it and take the time to heal these deeper layers and to honor that, to honor the sacrifice that we have made time and time again to be here in this reality, right? There is a reason that we're here. And as I keep healing through past lives and as I find my clients are healing through theirs, it makes more sense now as to why we do keep reincarnating and as to why we are here, one after the other. We keep coming back. There's so much beauty to be found. We get to travel all across the universe. We get to travel all across the earth itself and see a lot of beautiful places. And we get to spend more and more time with our soul family here in the 3D. It can truly be a beautiful journey. Absolutely. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. If you want to learn more about your own past lives or are curious to have an Akashic Record reading, you can click the link down below and it'll take you to my Akashic Records page on my website, heartofbrit.com, and maybe we can explore some of your past lives together. How fun would that be? Anyway, I hope that you're having a beautiful week. I will see you next time.